A new generation of VR is here. 4K, HDR visuals, intelligent eye tracking, haptic feedback, 3D audio immersion, 120 frames per second. Sony's PSVR 2 headset packs a hell of a punch. And what better game to showcase all of that VR wizardry than Horizon Call of the Mountain? Not simply a technical showcase. The title is set to be a fully fledged game that will give you an experience like you've never seen before. But then again, there have been several hardware landmarks and next generation VR games that have been touted as the perfect entry point into this world of gaming's future. Is Call of the Mountain this definitively? For all of you who've been on the fence about buying into VR gaming, is now the time. Guerrilla Games have been known to push boundaries before. Zero Dawn was hailed as one of the most graphically impressive games we'd ever seen. And yet, it looks rudimentary when compared to its follow-up, Horizon Forbidden West. They don't just know how to make visually appealing games, they've built up a vast setting steeped in intricate world building that results in something unique and awe-inspiring. It's a setting of huge scale and wonder that make it a perfect host for a VR adventure, although an ambitious one at that. The game sees you take control of Riaz, a disgraced and discharged soldier looking to redeem himself and his honour. He's an apt climber and a skilled marksman. His physical prowess and remarkable abilities will be a central focus of Call of the Mountain. We've traversed the wilds twice now as Aloy, but this is promising to be a whole new take on the game. Going from third person to first person alone will grant a more immersive perspective. Whether we're scrounging at the river's basin, traversing the highest peaks, or running away from the world's many mechanical monsters, we're expecting to see this title show us just what Sony's newest hardware is capable of. But it's not all flash without finesse. Call of the Mountain is going to make full use of the headset's impressive capabilities. It will make you feel the heights of the vast vertical world, creating 360-degree immersion both visually and audibly. Not to mention, its haptic adaptive controls will give us the closest possible feeling to fighting off a 2-ton hunk of sentient metal. So what we're looking at here is something complete, encompassing and downright impressive. If you've been on the sidelines of VR gaming before, checking in every now and again, you'll note that it's the far sight away from the party games, irreverent titles or tech demonstration games that do little more than impress your mates. And that's a common thing to see with VR gaming. On our consoles and on our PCs, we're so used to playing titles that deliver us massive game worlds and hundreds of hours of entertainment. Why trade that in for games that can only be played in short bursts and can't begin to live up to the scope and scale that we're used to? Furthermore, the games that can deliver that scale of being a fully fledged game, well, all the best ones work just as well outside of VR. That's all reasonable thinking that may have kept you away from the entire era of immersive gaming, but the fact is, it's just not true anymore. Okay, yes, there are still plenty of titles that are there to provide a little bit of fun and revelry in short bursts, or to crack out and play with friends now and again. But there's a reason for this. They're just fun. They're a spectacle. Having friends over and playing Beat Saber is a unique experience. Those of you old enough to remember playing Guitar Hero in its heyday will remember something kind of similar. You're getting together and engaging in an activity which is just a little bit different. And yes, there are those titles which seem at first glance to just be a showcase of what the controllers can do, the likes of Blade and Sorcery, Pistol Whip, Arizona Sunshine. They act as a demonstration, but they are, each in their own right, fully fledged games which can provide hours of entertainment outside of the initial getting to grips with phase. Lots of VR games do boil down to shooting galleries, but that's not to say it doesn't work. They're at home in the game's control system and they make the most of the 360-degree camera. You could say the same for conventional gaming. How many first-person shooter games are simply souped up, highly evolved versions of Doom? Call of the Mountain will provide a full, immersive, complete single-player game experience in VR. But it's far from the first of its kind. There have been a multitude of in-depth, built-for-VR titles that have been superb. The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, Lone Echo, Moss. Not to mention Valve's exceptional continuation of the Half-Life franchise, Alyx. These are experiences you won't get without VR, but even the adaptations have been designed to provide more than their standard counterpart. You can play Resident Evil normally, but put on a headset and everything is amplified. The same goes for Subnautica or Hitman 3 or Elite Dangerous, Sniper Elite, No Man's Sky, Skyrim, Fallout. It's the same basic game, but it's not the same experience. So Call of the Mountain isn't suddenly going to elevate and advance VR gaming, because frankly it's already further along than most people assume it to be. And while it may be an evolution, one important thing that it will surely do is break down previous preconceptions of playing games with a headset. This isn't going to be just another overpriced tech demonstration, or something to teach you the controls of your new piece of tech, but something to reaffirm why you bought into this idea. And there's several reasons why Call of the Mountain is the perfect game for this. One fundamental and crucial feature that makes VR work is complete absorption. You want to create a world so full of wonder and vibrancy that players can, even if briefly, forget they're in a game. They could just reach out and touch what's around them. There aren't many game worlds that are as vivid, extravagant, or awe-inspiring as Horizon's. One of its main draws is its verticality, the ability to explore the world from its underbelly to its dizzying peaks. Witnessing and experiencing that is a spectacle in itself, but in VR, it's a match made in heaven. And as you progress, this daunting, sprawling landscape can be taken advantage of. Cliff faces are traversed, chasms are spanned on zip lines, and a huge world gets more manageable and entirely within your control. It's also a world that players know. Fans of the first two games will remember their surprise at seeing a long neck stumbling around the pastures, but how much more amplified is that experience when you see one making its way towards you, towering over you, just inches away. It's an immersion that for many will be somewhat familiar, and that helps tread one of the other fine lines. Because of its very nature, VR can be overwhelming. With a setting like this, even more so. Giving some familiarity helps center the player. While Zero Dawn and Forbidden West are completely open world, Call of the Mountain is built more around linearity. That may be a con to some players, but I'd argue otherwise. Yes, a huge open world is incredible, but when talking about full VR, it'll very quickly become an assault to the senses. For those that aren't accustomed to VR and are just taking their first few steps, a sprawling world of infinite possibility is dizzying. Guerrilla have made the very conscious decision to pull back the reins a bit. It keeps players on a course, but provides them enough agency to feel like they're still in control. The little play-by-play actions, they're all on you. You won't have the game holding your hand when you're defending yourself from an aggressive sawtooth, but it'll give you little nudges to make sure you're staying on track and not getting overwhelmed. By all accounts, the game could act as your perfect entry point to the world of VR. It's designed to showcase and utilise the PSVR 2's new impressive tech, and in a setting that PlayStation fans should be familiar with. So it seems like this is as good a game as any to be buying into VR for. Well, yes and no. Call of the Mountain looks to be incredibly impressive, just staggering, but it also comes with a premium price tag. It'll set you back the same as other AAA titles on launch, but it's only going to be a 6 or 7 hour experience. I can look past that if the game is good enough, but it shines a light on the big elephant in the room. Buying into VR is expensive. PSVR 2, while on the cheaper end of headsets, is still $550. That's more than the cost of the PS5. Not to mention that the creator of the headset has been pretty clear that it won't have any compatibility for PC, meaning you'll miss out on the wealth of titles on Steam. For those, you need Valve's own Indexed, or a Rift, a Vive, or one of the other alternatives. So the PSVR loses out on a lot of potential bang for your buck. PC users have access to the most varied library of VR games, and while they might not have Horizon, there are hundreds of other titles to choose from. And that's just it. VR isn't something to go into lightly, nor for one game alone. There won't be one title to sell you on the notion. You might be drawn in by Horizon, but the library boasts a few other heavy hitters. Gran Turismo 7, Resident Evil 7, and even an open world MMO in the form of Zenith the Last City. Yet, It's still a big investment and one that won't see as many returns as buying a cheaper PC-compatible headset. Yes, the PS specs are pretty great and it's brand new tech, but again, it costs more than the console itself. This isn't an accessory, but a pedigree piece of hardware. And then again, the average price of a VR headset today is about $420. 5 years ago, it was $400. In 5 years' time, it'll still probably be around the same price. So $550 is a reasonable price for a headset, especially one of this caliber. But if you're not ready to spend that kind of money, trends have shown that there'll be an equivalent in a few years, just as there was a few years ago. It's not a purchase to be taken lightly, and if you're not ready to buy into VR, there'll be entry points in the future. Sure, you may feel like you're missing out on these games now, but there'll be other titles that come along and bowl you over in VR, just as Horizon will do on the PSVR 2. If, however, you purchased, enjoyed, and felt like you got your money's worth out of the first PSVR headset, then it's pretty safe to say you'll do so with its successor. It's got 4 times the power, it'll be a huge upgrade, and there's no denying that. If your plan was always to upgrade to the PSVR 2 anyway, then it's only logical to get Call of the Mountain. Yes, it's a premium price tag for a game, but it's also a premium experience. It will show you just what your new piece of tech is capable of, and give you an idea of the scope and scale game devs might realise for the headset in the coming years. And it's worth mentioning again, it looks phenomenal. As anyone who's bought into VR knows, the best thing about it is putting it on your friends to see their wonder and disbelief. And there isn't a game out there which can showcase the capability and amazement of VR in such a short space of time like Call of the Mountain will.